In 1967, The Doors had already taken the world by storm with their debut album and the hit Light My Fire. But their second album, Strange Days, proved the band had much more to offer. Let's dive into the story of Love Me Two Times, its evolution and its different versions. It's a song that mixes blues, swing and psychedelia to create something unique.
You know, we never thought about the longevity of the Doors. It was just the opposite. What you do as a musician is you have to get in that moment of time. It's a Zen moment. It's like, be here now. You must be in that music at that moment. In that the rhythm, the chord changes, the melody, and Jim's words were the only thing that existed in the universe at that particular instant. And you have to lock into that and just, you have to be one with the music.
This song was meant to be on their first album, but the recording didn't happen in time. By the time they got around to recording Strange Days, Love Me Two Times was ready to go. In the early days of The Doors, with the spirit of continuing to create, Morrison urged the band to write songs. Robby Krieger came up with two milestones of his own, Love Me Two Times and Light My Fire. Jim Morrison was The Doors' main songwriter, but Robby Krieger also contributed as a composer, providing 2 or 3 songs with his own lyrics on each album. Examples of his contributions are Touch Me, Spanish Caravan, and Wishful Sinful. The songwriting credits were shared equally among the 4 band members, reflected in the credits as music and lyrics by The Doors. Krieger wrote the song with the idea of being loved before going off to war, dealing with themes of love and loss in difficult times. The main theme is physical, intimate love.
You know, when I wrote Love Me Two Times, I was thinking about the soldiers going out to Vietnam, right? How long they would have to be without their girlfriends, you know. Therefore, Love Me Two Times. But I wanted to write a blues, and you know, whenever the Doors did a blues, we always tried to do something a little different, you know. So I stuck in what's called a circle of fifths, which is of course, I didn't know it was a circle of fifths at the time. To me, it just sounded good, you know. Anyway, Love Me Two Times is one of Jim's favorites, and we always love to play it.
Robby practiced flamenco guitar, and Robby Krieger is the only guy in rock and roll who played with his fingers, you know? He didn't use a pick, he played flamenco style.
The first thing most of us think of when we remember this song is definitely the iconic riff, which repeats throughout the song and stands out for its tension, repetition, and the need for sonic resolution. It also uses space well, which helps it flow. It's this space between the notes that gives it a breathing feeling and lets it flow in a sophisticated and effortless way. Robby was inspired by the song Southbound Train by John Kerner. Unfortunately, I can't add part of the song here because of copyright issues, but you can check it out on YouTube and find the similarity. With this arrangement, Krieger creates a melody that's both catchy and evocative. This character allowed the song to move away from the typical riffs of other rock bands of the time, which tended to be more aggressive. Even though Robby drew on blues structures, he introduced a minor scale to give it a melodic twist that made sense with the drive to explore new sounds. The influence of musicians like John Lee Hooker and Muddy Waters is clear, but filtered through the psychedelic sensibility of the time. Krieger's guitar is complemented by Ray Manzarek's keyboard. This combination creates a unique sound texture that's characteristic of the Doors' music. For most of the song, Jim Morrison left out the S in 2 times, giving the phrase a double meaning, alluding to a two-timer, someone who cheats on their partner. John Densmore completed the atmosphere with a swing jazz-influenced beat. This lively rhythm contrasted with the intensity of Jim Morrison's vocals, which delivered a performance full of passion and desire. Produced by Paul Rothchild and engineered by Bruce Botnick, it was recorded at the legendary Sunset Sound Studios in Los Angeles, where the band experimented with new sonic textures for their second album, Strange Days. Love Me Two Times was recorded between April 4th and May 25th, 1967. For the recording not just of this song, but of the entire Strange Days album, producer Paul Rothchild used a 3M 8-track recorder. This analog equipment allowed for recording up to 8 independent tracks, which offered greater flexibility and quality in the recording, facilitating mixing and separation of instruments. The machine used 1-inch wide magnetic tape. This provided higher fidelity and clarity in the sound, with less distortion and a superior dynamic range.
When Paul would be there and Bruce Botnick, our engineer, the two of them, Rothschild and Botnick, were always on us. Come on, you guys, get into line here. Let's get a take. Come on, let's get a take. And we worked our butts off in the recording studio. It was, we were like little scientists, like I could see us in lab coats, you know. The second album, especially, Strange Days, when we got 8 tracks to record, it was like we were in heaven. You know, the first album was 4 tracks. The second album was 8 tracks. We could do everything we did on the first album and still have 4 tracks to overdub. And yet Jim is having the time of his life, man. We're being very scientific, and he's goofing and having, you know, because he's just got to do the vocals. Robby and I and John have to do the very precise, all our parts and everything. Jim does the vocals. That's all he's got to do. The rest of the time, he's goofing off, man. He's having a grand time, you know, doing this and that and the other thing. So the legends you've heard about the Doors in the recording studio are true, but we were also very scientific, too.
In December 1967, it was released as a single. The same month, Jim Morrison was arrested at a concert in New Haven. This incident, combined with the suggestive lyrics, enhanced the Doors' dark and rebellious image, especially Jim Morrison's, causing some family-friendly radio stations to refuse to play the song, although it didn't achieve the massive success of Light My Fire. Perhaps because of the controversy surrounding the band at the time, it was well received, reaching number 25 on the Billboard chart on January 13, 1968. The censorship isn't surprising if we consider the context of the 1960s. The concept and lyrics of this work were considered another way to corrupt youth and challenge good morals, so more conservative radio stations deemed it inappropriate for the general public.
I also remember it was like 9 o'clock in the morning, man. It was like, we all looked at each other and went, oh shit, we have to go and play a concert at 9 o'clock in the morning. And then we had to play in front of the cameras with no audience. It's very weird. It was cold as hell in that studio, but, you know, by the time we got going, I must say it's a great Doors performance, and Jim Morrison doing Love Me 2 Times is just, whoa, really cool.
One of the most iconic audio-visual recordings, besides being the only one captured entirely with Morrison on vocals, comes from their live performance for Danish television on September 18, 1968, while the band was on tour in Europe. This moment was used by the band to film and release in the 1980s, along with other footage from the tour, the material titled The Doors in Europe. You've probably seen this version either on YouTube through the Dance on Fire VHS and DVD, or through audio. For its release on Dance on Fire, this segment was edited with a sepia tone and photographs were added for dynamism. But in the original version of Live in Europe, it's a grayscale video where you can see an initial solemnity that Jim gradually dissolves. We can also see a clean and energetic performance from the other members of the Doors, while Morrison gradually increases the vocal intensity, giving the piece the necessary substance that the lyrical premise suggests. Whether it's the best live version of Love Me 2 Times or not, it's undoubtedly the most popular and the one that many people probably associate with both Jim's leather outfit and the first chords of the love plead Love Me 2 Times. This performance was selected for Alive, She Cried, released in 1983.
Danish television program that we did turned up about a year ago. We had no idea it was in existence. And hopefully you'll be able to see one of those cuts. Love Me 2 Times was made into a video. Love Me 2 Times on the album, and Texas Radio and the Big Beat comes from the Danish TV show. And we had a lot of lost tapes that finally turned up.
From 1968 to the years after Morrison's death, the band experimented with the song's structure, length, and interpretation. One of the first examples of this expansion occurred on November 10th, 1968, at a concert in Minneapolis, where it was extended to 11 minutes and included harmonica player Tony Glover. During this improvisation, Robby Krieger played phrases that 2 years later would shape Roadhouse Blues. One of the rawest versions, so to speak, was performed at the controversial Miami concert in March 1969, where you can hear Jim Morrison under the influence of alcohol. I invite you to listen to it and leave your opinion in the comments. By 1970, it had taken on a more blues-influenced approach. In concerts like those in Bakersfield and Honolulu, it was merged with Muddy Waters' Baby Please Don't Go, a common practice on that tour where songs transformed into extensive improvisation sessions. Jim, increasingly inclined toward poetic exploration, added spontaneous verses while the band extended instrumental passages with greater freedom. In 1972, they adopted a more marked rhythm section, bringing it closer to rhythm and blues. The groove allowed Robby to extend his solos, while Manzarek incorporated a vocal performance with hints of jazz.
Two-time, baby. Love it twice today. Head up, better.
Without Morrison at the front, the song lost some of its identity. Still, instead of trying to imitate him, Manzarek, Krieger and Densmore, using their virtuosity, chose to give it new life, adapting it to the lineup they had at that time. Love Me Two Times remains one of the Doors' most beloved songs. Its unique mix of genres and its ability to transcend eras have made it a timeless classic. What's your favorite version of Love Me Two Times? Leave your opinion in the comments.